Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Woodstock City Council, April 3rd, 2025. This hybrid meeting is being held in person here in council chambers and electronically in accordance with section 238, subsection 3.3 of the Municipal Act and section 16.6.24 of the City of Woodstock Procedure Bylaw. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording will be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. And we do not have any councilors attending virtually today. We did have a closed session that started slightly later than anticipated. We started at 12:20. And we adjourned that closed meeting at 1:23. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
I, Councillor Wismer Van Meer, declare the following potential deemed direct or indirect pecuniary interest agenda item 15.A, subject matter 2025 community grant program. General nature of the interest. I am currently employed full-time with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Oxford County, a recommended grant recipient.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. No disclosures of new business that I'm aware of. No matters arising from the minutes, which brings us to the minutes. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mariachi. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Leatherborough that the minutes of the regular meeting of Woodstock City Council held on March 20th, 2025 be adopted.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns with those? Seeing none. All those in favor? That is carried. Additions to the agenda. Councillor Martin.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer that the following items be added to the agenda. Consideration of correspondence item 10A, David Pember, petition to restore public access to Lions Pool and demand fiscal transparency in municipal subsidy allocations. And the second item is special committee and advisory task force reports item 15A, 2025 community grant program.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns with those? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. No presentations or delegations this afternoon or consideration of planning reports. Of course, we do have some consideration of correspondence. Brings us to 10A, petition to restore public access to Lions Pool. Looking for a motion? No motion on the floor. So next, that brings us to number 11, presentations from staff and approved agents. Mr. Mascarin, our Integrity Commissioner for the City of Woodstock, is attending virtually. Mr. Mascarin, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, would you like me to proceed?
Oh, video's back. Can you try speaking there? We'll see if we can still hear you okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was asking if I was given the okay to proceed. I can see that there was a hitch there.
Yeah, there was. So you're good now. Thank you very much. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. And again, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm here representing your Integrity Commissioner. My name is John Mascarin. I'm a partner with Aird & Burles LLP in Toronto. My firm was appointed as Integrity Commissioner for the City of Woodstock by formal appointment back on November the 3rd, 2024. I am the lead for all of my firm's accountability mandates. I oversee and manage all of the Integrity Commissioner services for our municipal clients and specifically for the city of Woodstock. I'll just be very clear. I typically do not conduct investigations on code of conduct complaints, nor do I typically conduct inquiries on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, any applications made thereunder. However, I decided to do so in this particular instance, given the number of related applications and the number of tangentially related complaints that my office has received, and because of the contentious nature of the matter. So I decided to take these on myself. It's not something that I typically do. I've been looking at the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act now for some 25 years. I've given advice to members of council. I have represented applicants trying to penalize members in applications to the court. I have represented members in responding to applications. And of course, I've been the Integrity Commissioner now for, I don't know, 13, 14 years. And so I have a specific knowledge base in this area. And I just thought for the first contentious ones that the city has seen, I thought it might be best for me to deal with it. So just a short explanation as to why you're seeing me this afternoon presenting on these. I'm here to present briefly to council on my report. It's a joint report based on three separate applications by three separate applicants that were made pursuant to section 223.4.1 of the Municipal Act. All of these applications were filed with the Integrity Commissioner, and they all allege that Councillor Kate Leatherbarrow has breached various provisions of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and I'll refer to it as either the statute or the MCIA. Now, as you may know, Council, the authority for the Integrity Commissioner to review matters related to the MCIA is relatively recent. Bill 68 back in 2018 made amendments to the Municipal Act, but also to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which fundamentally changed the rules of engagement with respect to the enforcement of the MCIA. For those of you who followed any history with relation to this statute, it's been in place essentially in its current iteration since 1972. Since that time, an allegation of contravention of the statute could be enforced at the instance of initially a ratepayer and then by an, quote, elector, by those persons personally bringing forward an application to the court for a determination of whether a member of council had breached the MCIA. This all changed as of March the 1st, 2019, where either one, an elector, or two, a person demonstrably acting in the public interest could file an application to the municipality's Integrity Commissioner for the Integrity Commissioner to inquire whether a member had acted in breach of the MCIA. Now, what you should know for the purposes of this report this afternoon, it is an information-only report. Unlike a code of conduct complaint where the Integrity Commissioner investigates a matter, reviews a matter, and the Integrity Commissioner then reports to council for council to make a decision as to the imposition of any possible penalties or remedial measures. An application under the section in which these applications were filed requires that the Integrity Commissioner conduct an inquiry and itself render a decision without any input from or for the need for council to make any sort of determination. We conducted our inquiry in accordance with the city's complaint process, which I must admit is rather skeletal, and subsection 223.4.1 sub 7 of the Municipal Act, which basically provides that the Integrity Commissioner may, quote, conduct such inquiry as he or she considers necessary. All of this is covered in paragraphs 38 and 39 of my report. The Integrity Commissioner provides that the Integrity Commissioner must make a decision within 180 days. That's typically because matters under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act are typically very complicated, and therefore an almost 6-month period is permitted for the Integrity Commissioner to make a determination and provide a report. I have submitted my report to Council, to the clerk on March the 25th. That's just over 3 months from the date when the final 2 applications were filed, which were December 18th and December 20th of 2024. I will indicate that we did hold those applications in abeyance for a certain period of time. We had anticipated that perhaps there was going to be more applications filed. And I say that because we had received a number of inquiries from the public on the matter, and there seemed to be a general interest. So in order to proceed cost effectively and efficiently, we decided to hold the complaints that we had in abeyance pending any further complaints so we could deal with them all together. As I indicated to you this afternoon, I'm going to provide a brief summary of my findings and my decision, which is set out in my report, where I jointly look at 3 submitted applications. It is my view that the report speaks for itself, and that all of the answers to the questions should be contained in the report itself. So the applications, there were 3 applications that were filed with our office, as I indicated, in late 2024. All 3 applications allege that the member variously contravened particular sections of the Municipal Act. One of them alleged sections 5 and 5.1. One alleged 5.2 alone, and the other alleged section 5. All 3 of the applications essentially arise from 2 disclosures of pecuniary interest that the member made at a meeting of council on December the 12th, 2024. The specific particulars of the declarations are set out in paragraph 21 of my report. I'll just read from it. Paragraph 21 says, at this meeting, council considered inter alia a delegation at item 8B, downtown Woodstock BIA, seeking to maintain phase 2 of the Dundas Street revitalization project. We've defined that as streetscape project in the 2025 capital budget, and also a motion at item 14.A.4, which was the adoption of the 2025 capital budget and 2026-2028 capital forecast to remove the debenture financing for phase 2 of that project. The councillor, the member, declared a pecuniary interest on both items. The member declared a pecuniary interest on both items based on written advice that I had provided to her in accordance with the Municipal Act. I provided this advice specifically because the member disclosed that she and her husband are tenants and operate a business at 375 Dundas Street. It's called the Early Bird Coffee. Interestingly, the applications do not allege a breach of the MCIA at this meeting. Each of the applications allege contravention by the member at earlier meetings and because of other actions that she has taken. However, the starting point for each of the applications commences at the meeting of December the 12th of 2024. And that is because each of the applicants contend that the members' declarations of pecuniary interest in that particular meeting with respect to the streetscape project meant that she has to have been in breach of the statute for not having declared her pecuniary interest on 2 previous occasions. Those two occasions were on March the 21st, 2024, when council made a decision on options to proceed with the large-scale multi-phased streetscape project for the downtown area of Woodstock. And council at that meeting elected to move forward on a number of options. I believe it was option number 4 with a phased approach. The second contravention was sometime in May of 2024 when council made a decision on a rezoning application pertaining to a redevelopment of 385 to 387 Dundas Street, which was just a few doors away from the premises that the member operates her business. The specific allegations with respect to each of these applications are set out in paragraphs 25 to 32 of the report. Now, I want to stop there for a moment. I want to just speak very, very briefly to the first application, 2501. This application was never properly submitted, but for completeness sake, and because it might have looked very awkward for council to receive a report today on the two applications number 2025-02 and 03, and it might have left everyone to wonder what happened to 01. That is because the application of 2501 purported to assert that the member had used her office as an elected representative to influence the decision or recommendations of officers or employees of the city, contrary to a new provision in the MCIA. That particular application was not properly submitted. There was no statutory declaration. And in fact, even though it referred specifically to section 5.2 and actually quoted it, it offered no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the allegation. We provided notice to the applicant and indicated that if they wished to file a proper application, they would need to do so in a certain form. We never received that form, nor did we ever deal further with it, except to report on it for completeness sake in the joint report that I've put forward. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I also realize that I've made a mistake. I've been referring to the applications as 2025 applications. In fact, I'm very sorry. They should be 2024. They were all filed at the end of 2024. And so those are the numbers. And I'm sorry, I refer to them as all 2025 applications. Now, we did deal with applications 2024-02 and 03. Both of those allege that because the member declared a pecuniary interest in December of 2024, she therefore intractably, unavoidably had contravened the MCIA on both previous occasions because she had a pecuniary interest in those two specific subject matters. So, the overall streetscape plan for the downtown area of Woodstock in March of 2024, and on the development application at 385, 387 Dundas Street West in May of 2024. The allegations are because of her geographic location of her business. On its face, let me say I completely appreciate the position of both applicants, as it would appear that the location of the member's business being in close proximity and within the downtown Woodstock Streetscape Master Plan area would possibly trigger her pecuniary interest obligations under Section 5 of the MCIA. Okay, so let me cut to the core question raised. Did the member have a pecuniary interest in the two votes of council in which she did participate and did vote in March and May of 2024? Let me say, yes, the member may very well have had a pecuniary interest in both matters. So some of you, perhaps someone listening in or at the council meeting, may ask then, why does my report find that the member did not breach the MCIA? There are two primary principal reasons. The first, there are applications in the MCIA which recognize that a member may have a pecuniary interest, but that it does not trigger their obligations of disclosure or recusal from participation, influencing, and voting under Section 5 of the Act. And the second reason is the former ICs express written advice to the member. My findings on both of these points are set out in some detail at paragraphs 46 to 59 of the report. So let me go to the latter one that I referred to. With respect to the municipality's former integrity commissioner's written advice to the member on the rezoning application, the member disclosed a copy of the written advice provided to her from the former integrity commissioner. It is clear from my reading of this advice that the former IC advised the member that he was of the opinion that the exception for remote or insignificant pecuniary interest under Clause 4K of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act was applicable, and therefore that she could vote on the matter. Accordingly, the member took the former IC's advice, and she did not declare pecuniary interest, and she voted on the rezoning application back in May. So our view of this is expressly set out in paragraph 49 of the report. And it's important, I want to read it to you. Paragraph 49 says, "We may agree or disagree with the former integrity commissioner's determination. However, we cannot fault the councillor for having sought and followed the written advice provided to her. As indicated, she did not declare a pecuniary interest on the planning application, but she did so based on the former integrity commissioner's advice." Now, I'm going to turn to the first point, and this is a little more technical, and I'm going to be a little more careful in trying to explain this. With respect to what appears to be the incongruous actions of the member in voting, firstly, on the options to implement the streetscape project in March of 2024, and her declaration and non-vote on what were essentially items related to implement phase 2 of the streetscape project in 2024. It is my opinion, and I have set this out in the report, that she was entitled to rely not on the exception that the former integrity commissioner referred her to with respect to the planning application, but with the exception that is set out in Clause 4J of the MCIA, which is an interest in common with electors generally. When the vote related to the entirety of the streetscape plan and the project that was before council in March of 2024. However, my advice was that she could not rely on the same exception when the matters came forward in December of 2024. Why? Because that particular matter, the two particular matters back in December of 2024 related to a much smaller impacted geographic area. Essentially, it related to whether phase 2 of the downtown streetscape project could proceed. And the question was, could the member actually vote on that, because her business was located in phase 4 of the project, which was immediately adjacent to phase 2 that was going to go ahead. I fully appreciate that my ultimate determination is highly technical in nature, but In my submission to you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, it ultimately aligns with the express definition of the term interest in common with electors generally in section 1 of the statute and the case law, the jurisprudence, which has interpreted both the definition as well as the application of the exception. As I have noted at paragraph 55 of my report, and I'm going to read from it. The Ontario Divisional Court has held that, quote, it is not the nature of the interest, but the breadth of those who share the interest, which defines whether Section 4J of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act applies, end quote. Moreover, the Ontario courts have determined that an interest in common with electors generally may exist when there is a significant number of electors within the geographic area, the class, or order in which the definition applies. In my view, at paragraph 56, quote, the consideration council was giving to the various options relating to the implementation of the entire streetscape plan on March the 21st, 2024 was materially different from the motion that council was asked to consider on December the 12th, 2024. My conclusion is summarized at paragraph 58 of the report, and I will read from it. Accordingly, it is our determination that the exception in clause 4J applied to the councillor on March the 21st, 2024, because of the breadth of the geographic area and the class of all of the owners affected by that large downtown redevelopment. However, in my determination, the exception did not apply to the council member in December 12th, 2024, as the motion to remove the debenture financing from the 2025 capital budget related to a much smaller geographic area and number of owners. It is a question of mixed fact and law that I had to make. Therefore, I finish off. It is for this reason that we recommended that the councillor declare a pecuniary interest on the motion at that meeting. It is our opinion that the councillor did not have to declare a pecuniary interest on March the 21st, 2024. The reason being, the consideration of the options report to council that night for the whole downtown BIA streetscape improvement project was materially different and included a much larger class, scale, and geographic area. Therefore, based on the foregoing, it is my conclusion that the member did not breach sections 5 or 5.1, or in fact, 5.2 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So, as I noted at the commencement of my presentation, the Municipal Act 2001 provides that it is the Integrity Commissioner who is the decision-making authority in this instance. Accordingly, the report is for informational purposes only to Council. Council has no authority to direct me to make an application to seek a judicial finding of contravention or to seek to impose a penalty, nor can council itself decide to impose a penalty. For breaches of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, only a court can do so. It is my ultimate decision on the 3 applications that, based on my assessment of all of the evidentiary matters that I considered and all of the applications, that I will not be making an application to a judge under Section 8 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. I provided notice to each of the applicants of my decision on March the 25th, 2024. I did not provide a copy of my report because the report goes to council. I report directly to council. I don't report to the applicants. However, the Municipal Act requires me to provide notice to the applicants, and I did, that I would not make a determination and go to court. Now, in case anyone's wondering, this does not leave the applicants without a remedy, as Section 8.3 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which typically imposes a 6-week limitation period on bringing forward an application, recognizes that if an applicant makes an application to the Integrity Commissioner and the Integrity Commissioner determines not to proceed, then the applicant or applicants can themselves bring forward an application to the court. So they do have a remedy. Finally, as specifically noted in the concluding paragraphs of my report, I would strongly recommend to council that all members of council be required to attend a mandatory training session on the MCIA. It appears to me that such a session has not been provided to council. I believe that council may have gotten a very brief briefing on the MCIA, which is simply not enough at your orientation. I recommend that training be provided and that it be done in an open public forum. That way, many of the answers that many members of the public were writing to us and requesting might be answered for all. So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, this concludes my formal presentation. I would be pleased to answer any appropriate questions from yourself or any members of council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the Integrity Commissioner? Councillor Schanberg.
Yeah, thanks for your very thorough report. It was actually nice the way it was numbered and brought down and delivered to councilors and for everyone to be able to read. Of course, it's now public information because the full agenda is on City of Woodstock website. My question is, though, if she declared a conflict of interest, therefore, on what's discussed as phase 2, which is adjoining what would be phase 4 in front of the store that she owns, what happens next when we start discussing the financing or the costs for phase 3, which starts at Finkel and goes eastward towards what phase 1 is, which is already under construction currently as we speak, which you have to declare a conflict on phase 3 financing and cost evaluations?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Schattenberg, I would have to consider that, Councillor Schattenberg. I couldn't tell you right now. That's not something that I specifically looked at, but it would be something that I would again have to apply. What is the law on this, and is it close enough in proximity and narrow enough in scope that she would have to declare? I can't tell you the answer right now.
Just as a follow-up, maybe more of a statement or anything like that, because our agenda today includes a consultant, MHBC, that's here to discuss streetscape master plan beyond just the street itself, going into what we call Museum Square or Civic Square. And that would include the museum and the starting again at Finkel Street and going eastward as to what the future of that project might look like. It could happen in 2 years, could happen in 25 years. We don't know. It's just it's a report from a consultant. But at the beginning of today's meeting, the said councilor did not declare a conflict of interest with the discussion on that item.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if that's a question, but I've just taken a look at the map, and I'll attempt to answer it. Phase 3 seems to be geographically some distance away, and my sense, without having considered it further, and I'm doing this on the fly, is that I do not believe that that would create a pecuniary interest that the member would have to declare.
Fair enough. That answers the question. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions of the Integrity Commissioner? Seeing none, then I'd like to say thank you very much for your report. I also really appreciated how it was broken down into sections that way, made it a little easier to read and understand. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I must say I don't ever like to appear for the very first time in front of a council with a report that I've done. So I hope that you'll forgive that that's the way it appeared today. But I thank you again for the opportunity to present. And well, you've given me a lot of time today, so thank you.
Thank you very much. So looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council direct staff to schedule a special open session meeting of council to participate in a training session with the City of Woodstock Integrity Commissioner regarding the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And further, that the cost of this training be funded from account number 1200-71120-0383, Integrity Commissioner Contract Service.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on that motion? Councillor Woodsmer Van Meer. Discussion? Councillor Leatherborough.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that this will be a great resource for this council. And certainly there is a municipal election next year, so I do look at this as a resource for both next term of council and the public, should they wish to access it at any point if they have questions. I think that it being public and readily available on the City of Woodstock YouTube channel, knowledge is power, and I think it could be very beneficial, and I certainly think this council could use it.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll certainly say that training is never a bad thing. I think we've all learned a lot through this process. A lot of questions. Again, I want to thank Mr. Mascarin for being as thorough as he was, because again, it has been a little contentious, and I think the general public, as Councillor Leatherborough just mentioned, could also benefit from having this open session, and certainly support an open session of this training for not only council, but the general public as well. With that, anything else? Oh, Councillor Leatherborough?
Sorry, could I please get a recorded vote?
Sure. Anyone else before I turn it over? Seeing none? Ms. Humphries?
Thank you, Your Worship. So we start with the mover, Councillor Leatherborough,
Yes.
Councillor Martin,
Yes.
Councillor Schadenberg,
No.
Councillor Wismer Van Meer,
Yes.
and Mayor Accioni.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries 4-1.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, that brings us to next item, 11B, Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, City of Woodstock Parks Plan. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, my name is Anand Desai, Principal Planner with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants. And this afternoon, I appreciate all of you having me to present an overview of the city's parks plan. Just try to get it to full screen. Find the view button. All right, excellent. So, a parks plan is a document that really reflects some changing legislation over the past number of years. Since about 2015-ish, there's probably been about 5 or 6 bills at least from the province that has altered the way in which municipalities can collect parkland as a condition of the development process. And so through one of those provincial bills, there was a statutory requirement for municipalities to prepare a parks plan, and more recently, another condition where a parks plan must be completed for municipalities essentially to collect any form of parkland, not just cash in lieu, as a condition of development. And so, working with the city of Woodstock, we wanted to make sure that there was the legislative basis to allow the city to have a policy as well as an implementing bylaw in place. So the parks plan is that kind of higher level document that will allow you to satisfy the condition through which you can collect parkland through bylaw. We will note that the parks plan in this instance focuses on recreational parkland. So it does not get into the natural heritage system or those kind of encumbered lands. Those are typically like the natural heritage system is dealt with through different policies and provisions. So really recreational parkland, as you can see by the definition, is really that is intended for regular use by the public, typically consisting of flat tablelands suitable for built infrastructure like playgrounds, sports fields, tennis courts, those kind of things, or again, areas where one can have a picnic or those general open spaces, again, not heavily forested or wooded areas per se. So at the moment, your city has a supply of just over 194 hectares of parkland distributed across 56 parks in the city. That translates into a service level. These are typically measured in terms of area per capita or area per population. 4 hectares per 1,000 residents is a very good level of service. I think, again, this was actually a historical standard that dates back many, many decades. You as a city have been able to kind of sustain that rate. Other municipalities have had more challenges as they've experienced growth and densification. Really, there are 3 different types of parks that your city provides. Not every park is the same, nor are they intended to be. At one end of the spectrum, we have very small parks that serve a highly localized catchment that one would expect to walk to from their house. We refer to these as parkettes and even neighborhood parks. We also have larger citywide or community serving parks that serve groups of neighborhoods. Southside, again, is a great example of that. So within your hierarchy, there are 3 classifications of park typologies that add up to those 194 hectares. As I mentioned, these provision standards are a common metric in which municipalities, target their supplies, keep apprised of how service levels are changing over time. And what we have found through this parks plan, again, is there is a strong rationale to continue with the greatest degree possible to target parkland at a rate that you historically have. We would see that being relatively equally distributed in terms of a target between your community park land as well as your neighborhood and parkette classifications combined. You are presently achieving a good rate of community parkland at 2.3 hectares per thousand. Neighborhood and parkettes are a little bit less at 1.6 in terms of current standard. We are targeting each classification respectively at 2 hectares per 1,000 people. And what that means with the forecasted growth, where we're looking at numbers prepared by the county as part of the basis of this plan. So if the city is moving towards over 63,000 folks by the year 2034, this would require, to maintain the same level of service, I would state, it would require an additional 49 hectares of parkland by the year 2034, distributed between 14 hectares of community parkland and 35 hectares of parkettes and neighborhood parks. We also undertook a bit of a walkability analysis to understand where parks are situated in relation to your primary residential areas. The map on the left illustrates pretty strong geographical coverage, to your residential areas at present. And as you have future developments occurring across the city, especially the northeast, the southwest, there are additional parkland supplies anticipated. And thus we believe that, again, your city will be well served distributionally should those parks be developed. But how do we get to 49 hectares? In the context of, again, changing legislation, the amendments to the Planning Act are such that really municipalities in general are entitled to about half the amount of parkland as a condition of development as you were even probably 5 years ago. So to maintain similar service levels, one might not be able to rely on parkland dedication or conveyance to the same extent as the past. And so really, though, what the Planning Act does allow, and this is more for information, that as a condition of development, if physical parkland were to be taken, 2% of those developments would be conveyed or required for conveyance for commercial and industrial uses, 5% of the land for additional. What you as council may consider, because we do know that the nature of development in your city is changing in certain areas. So where there are perhaps higher or medium or higher density developments, there may be rationale to use the alternative rate specified by the Planning Act that is not a fixed percentage, but rather indexed to the number of units that is being proposed through the development. You are also entitled to cash in lieu. As a municipality, for example, the park plan does provide some ideas in terms of where cash in lieu would be appropriate, and it would allow you to build up a cash in lieu reserve to fund parkland elsewhere in your city. Ultimately, the Parks Plan makes a few recommendations, really to adopt that parkland classification consisting of the 3 tiers of parks, maintaining your service level at 4.0 hectares per thousand. We believe in the power of parks. We know that there's evidence that suggests that parks are valuable, and we would encourage the city to strive towards maintaining its service levels. We would suggest that parkland or the cash in lieu that it's obtained largely be assigned to those outdoor functions. It is not always, helpful to take parkland and build community centers on them, for example. That may have to be done in certain instances, but as a condition moving forward, we want to maximize the amount of outdoor space with a focus on neighborhood parks and parkettes to service those localized areas. And then subsequently, from an implementation perspective, prepare a parkland dedication bylaw so that you may require and acquire parkland as a condition of the land development process. I believe there is a staff report that accompanies this. I believe my presentation is also for information, but I am happy to take any questions about the parkland from council at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Schanberg?
Yeah, from the mayor through to Mr. Desai, thanks for your presentation. We've talked on several occasions, back to even to the Recreation Advisory Committee and whatnot too, because you've been involved with the city of Woodstock for a long time. And as we've discussed, you grew up, not necessarily grew up in the city of Woodstock, but you certainly lived here for quite a while in your youth. My question is a bit of a, what might be called a conundrum, that the city of Woodstock is organized and has created a agreement with the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority to be able to use the green space in what used to be called the day use park area, which is now a 3-day use park area. But then you have in your distributional analysis thing that it really should be a 10-minute walk from a residence. So unfortunately, for example, where the disc golf course is, which is somewhat open green space, you could build a playground there. There isn't one there now. Would you declare that parkland, or how do you declare that, because of the fact that there's a disc golf course on there, but you literally couldn't walk there within 10 minutes from either side of Piddock to get to that location. And I don't think it's actually in your acreage or your hectare numbers for parkland for Woodstock.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Schanberg, and through you, Mr. Mayor. You know, the provision of parks and open space and natural areas in a municipality really is a joint effort between a number of parties, the city being one. Conservation authorities are another. There might be, again, instances where private sector or schools contribute a degree of open space, but not necessarily to the same level of access, maintenance, quality of design, you know, as you might find with your city standards. I think when it comes to things like disc golf, it's been excellent that you as a city, you know, have, you know, sought partnerships with others to provide amenities, to supplement your open space. I would say, you know, certainly when it comes to parkettes and even certain neighborhood parks, you would have that expectation of, you know, being within reasonable walking distance of a property. When we look at a place like Cowan Sports Fields, for example, or even a conservation area, for example, you know, it's not unreasonable to expect that certain parks, like those community parks or higher order parks in the system, that you know, one might have to drive from different parts of the city there. So I think you know, to really your question, and hopefully I'm addressing this adequately, it is a joint effort. As I did mention, if we are to maintain that existing level of service, uh, the Planning Act, at least from a parkland perspective, doesn't provide you with the same amount necessarily of parkland as in the past. So it will be finding ways to work creatively with others, whether it's your schools, whether it's other institutional agencies, or even the private sector.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Outchony. Just to follow up on that, you've talked about other agencies, schools and so on. Is there anything in legislation that is leading us towards having conversations with industrial sites? And I think of, as you drive along Parkinson, there's 8.5 acres of lawn on one side of the road, another 4.5 acres on the other. And we are required to have that green space for water runoff and so on to balance out the concrete and asphalt. But it appears to be unutilized or underutilized space. Is there anything in legislation or anything in best practices that could be considered for optimizing that space for recreation, parkettes, play spaces, et cetera?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Great question. And again, it is, you know, about working well with others. There's nothing legislated when it comes to, you know, making use of industrial properties, but we have seen municipalities where you know, they have those strong relationships with large landowners, including, I can recall one community that owned a lot of land of that municipality and had, you know, for something about 25 years, provided something like 10 or 15 soccer fields on their property. The unfortunate thing was that same municipality, not that long ago, that plant expanded and needed that land. So I think it's a matter of, again, not necessarily through legislation, but those conversations. You know, you all have fingers on various pulses of what's happening, what your landowners are needed. You as a city want to, I suppose, take a measured approach when it comes to investing in lands that are not owned by yourself. You know, a soccer field is one thing. You know, to build a splash pad and tennis courts and put a lot of money into a park without, you know, a long-term guarantee of public access is something that would need to be weighed. But I do think there is opportunity here. I mean, we do have again, a good industrial land base, you know, institutional land base. How can we work, you know, collaborative with others, I think is a great question.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, seeing none, I just like, thank you. Welcome back to the city. We always love to see you here and really do appreciate the report. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be here. Take care. Take care.
Now, no resolution is required as this is referred to the department report item 14D.1. So next, I'd like to welcome Ms. Sinclair from MHBC, Civic Square and City Hall Expansion Concepts. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and the public. My lesson learned today is I should read the whole agenda, so when something related comes on, I'm not so thrown off by it. But we're presenting on this project in a much different lens. I'm Andrea Sinclair with MHPC. I'm joined here today with Jason Morgan from JPM Architects, and also in council chambers today is Akash Singh from our office, who's one of our landscape architects who's been a key part of this project from the beginning. So we're really here today to provide an update to council on this project. It's been some time since you've seen the evolution of the design for the Civic Square. I'm going to keep my part of the presentation fairly brief and provide enough time for Jason to go through what council hasn't really had a chance to look at, which is the potential extension to City Hall, which you'll see little bits of that through my presentation. So just traveling back to 2022, which was the last time I was here in council chambers presenting the vision for the square. This was the concept that was provided to council. And I remember quite clearly one of the main comments that came out of that presentation was, we've got to buy that building and get it out of there so we can open up the square more than it is today. So that happened. We're excited that the square was able to be expanded beyond what we were first working with. But there were a lot of really key features in this original master plan, including finding ways to activate the space for all 4 seasons. So a big part of that being the potential for a skating rink, making sure that events could be held here, as well as sort of passive type play enjoyment, so that there's, even when there's not an event going on, there's things that draw you to the space. So we wanted to make sure that going forward, we carried those ideas through, but in a larger, more expanded space. So this is the current concept plan. I won't go through all of the little details, but just a few key things I want to focus in on. So around the existing fountain, we've added in the idea of having some water play, so jets that come up. So during the summer months, you can sit and watch, but it can also function as a bit of a informal splash pad. You see with the circle rings here being added to the paving pattern. Don't know if everyone's aware, but the traditional geographic center, or the historic geographic center of Woodstock, is currently in there. It's not overly well marked, but kind of drawing the secondary circle to make that more of a prominent feature. Having a large gathering space that could double as skating in the winter. And then one thing that was really challenging to incorporate previously when we had a large building here is bringing in sort of a permanent stage space that so larger events could be had here. And the stage is very adaptable, so you could have movie projections, you could bring in performances. And then, of course, as part of this, we're now looking at the City Hall extension, which Jason's going to get into more detail on. So I'm not going to go spend too much time on these, but this is just sort of how we've organized the space, with each area of the square having sort of a different focus. And this just shows movements through the site. So this is a closer view around the existing fountain. So you'll see this probably shows it better, the added sort of features with the rings. And as I mentioned, and you can see in the precedent images, this is what we're thinking in terms of the water features that would be available there. Similar to last time, if you've got a hard copy of this, or if you're on your computer later and you scan the QR code on your phone, it takes you into the 3D model, so you can kind of look around. And just something that I don't know how to do these things, but I find them really interesting. Another view just from the looking into the square. I'll move through these fairly quickly, but just to give everyone, it's always nice to see it sort of 3-dimensional. And then moving to the sort of event space stage area, which is, like I said, the stage is sort of a newer feature that we didn't have as formalized in the original concepts. I'm just showing how that can be transformed in the winter months. Another thing that we spent more time focusing on this time around is around the museum building or the market building, having more accessible access and opening that up. There's a lot of sort of barriers and grade changes and railings and things. So we've looked at a way to make that really open into the square so that you can bring in tables. And we've also on the street side have kind of looked at opening that up to make it a bit wider. It feels a little tight in that space right now. So those are some of the areas we've had a little bit more focus on. This is along the Finkel Street side, so a little bit quieter space. It's where more trees, areas to sit, but we're expecting more of the activity to happen central to the square. This is where I was talking about how we've tried to open this space up. So we've removed a lot of those current grade changes and barriers that exist today. It was important to still keep a little bit of parking here. This space has also been designed so that if there's emergency services vehicles need to come in, or during events, you need to bring in trucks and things to set up. This whole area has removable bollards. You can come right in and drive on it, but for the most part, it's meant to be a pedestrian space and not have cars coming through it unless needed on an interim basis. Just show some more images of this area. And I'm gonna really quickly go flip through these because I really don't want to take away Jason's part of the presentation. So I'm gonna just hide all these sneak previews. And so really just landing on sort of how the concept has evolved since we've had the ability to expand more fully into the space. We always knew there was a possibility of a bit of an extension to City Hall, but it really wasn't thought through when we were first engaged. We now have much better idea of what that may look like, the size that we might be looking at, and have really worked together with Jason's group to make sure that both the square and the extension would really work together. A lot of similar architectural details brought in, and we're just very excited to present it to all of you today. So I'll turn it over to Jason for the next part. And
Thanks, Andrea, Mr. Mayor, Council, pleasure to be here and excited to show you some possibilities for what can happen with City Hall. With every project, we like to, I think, dive into the site context, the heritage, the history of the city, the specific site, and what kept coming up over and over again in our research and study of the city and getting to know the city, walking around, driving around, seeing what's there, and then looking back in the past. I think what stood out the most was the industrial sort of sector and the industrial typologies, the architecture that existed in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it was this sort of repetitive, wood frame, timber frame buildings, a lot of very simple economical buildings that were constructed obviously for utilitarian purposes during the industrial sort of height of Woodstock and continues to this day. And we're trying to bring some of that flavor actually into the City Hall edition and suggest, maybe we can bring back some of those historic elements and make it something that's very specific to Woodstock instead of something generic that could be found anywhere, in the province. Let's sort of celebrate that heritage and the history and incorporate it into the design so it stands out and there's a bit of a story to tell when we're actually looking at the design for the building. And again, looking at the past history of, Market Square and some of the old industrial buildings, also turning towards more contemporary examples. So, you get the flavor of exposed structure, very industrial type of appearances, but very contemporary, very clean, modern, very welcoming. So you have very large, expansive, sort of indistinguishable spaces from outside to inside. So you have shelter, you have welcoming when you're coming into the building and to the new spaces. We're starting to, generate a design and say what's important for the site. How do we integrate it within Civic's, the new Civic design for the Civic Square? And again, trying to keep prominence to what was here, the old post office and the current City Hall that we're in right now. So we're trying to, step back a possible addition from Dundas and give prominence to the corner and to the heritage context, the heritage building, and keep sort of that industrial flavor. The economy is trying to build in, a simple design, that we can ultimately make very interesting. But when we start with a base, a simple grid structure, whether it be a timber frame structure or a steel frame structure, there's a lot of good economies there, and we can actually play with the design and introduce negative spaces and welcoming spaces where main entrances might occur. We start cladding the exterior, again, coming up with a common rhythm and a common scale that really speaks to that sort of industrial heritage. And then trying to integrate it with the old post office and current city hall and provide, specific lines and specific heights that very well relate to the existing heritage fabric. And we're trying to create, again, these entrance sort of plaza spaces. So you have large double height spaces coming off Dundas. And it's a very open, welcoming space. There's no confusion about where the new entrance is into City Hall. And then sort of the final step is, deciding on materiality and colors and coming up again with those inspirations from the past where, maybe you can integrate some of the old sandstone detailing and colors and bring them onto the new facades and keep the same colors, the same tones, and try to make it seamless, but at the same time, it's very contemporary, very modern, and it pays homage to the heritage by, being something a little more distinct and unique. So you arrive at sort of an ultimate concept design, and working with Andrea's group at MHBC for the whole Civic Square design. And we're trying to, incorporate canopies and welcoming points, entrance points. We have washrooms off of Civic Square as well. So that outdoor activities, you can try to have some sort of relationship between the two with the new building addition in Civic Square, the activities that are happening outside, the new main entrance, and then further, at night, try to activate the entire site by lighting, sensitivity to lighting, and have the building come alive at night, be very expressive. You can see the structure, you can see the activity inside the spaces. It's just very opening, welcome. There's always a sense of shelter and space and a gathering point for the city and the community. Very council chambers we're standing in, trying to expand council and try to make it more accessible, barrier-free, accessible, but also just the perception of council, like having it open and accessible to Civic Square and having that transparency from inside to outside. Using technology, we can use drop-down screens when the sun's bright out, but open the space up, when the sun is away, and we can have that interaction between indoors and outdoors. So this is a view of the southwest, and we have the new Civic Square there. And we have, again, some support for Civic Square. We have, spaces for Zamboni rooms and chiller rooms and pump plants, I guess, for the outdoor skating rink. So City Hall expansion would help support those outdoor spaces as well. This is a good view of the southwest corner. So we're on Reeve Street and obviously the existing public entrance here. And, we keep some of that transparency of the addition. We step it back from the heritage structure and, expose some of the new structure. And you can, again, get that sense of indoors and outdoors and have that sort of respectful connection to what's here now. A very, prominent view, prominent main entrance off of Dundas Street. There would be potential alignment with pedestrian crossings for Dundas Street so that your arrival point is always at the main entrance. There's no confusion about, where to go and to access those services and support. And then moving towards Civic Square. So again, we have that nice welcoming canopy, the shelter, a secondary entrance into the main lobby space. Again, doors into washroom space and facilities that can help support Civic Square and the development. And Andrea mentioned the performance stage. So trying to bring some of the elements from the new, potential for City Hall into the performance stage. So you have the same sort of rhythm, materials, the same lighting effects, and you can use it all times of day and for different types of performances, and could be theatrical, it could be movie events, could be musical. And just some of the inspirations, obviously everyone should be familiar with Oxford County admin building, and that's sort of, probably the look and feel in combination with something like Guelph. So you have a very welcoming, opening, double height intake center, essentially. So there's no confusion. Staff can have representation from different departments into that main lobby and different desks that people can attend. So there's, very heightened interaction between public and staff, and it's very easy to get to those services that public may need. Staff were great to work with, and we got all of the numbers and requirements from staff for the various departments, the square footages, the number of offices, private offices, open offices, meeting rooms, etc. So we combine all that in a spreadsheet, a more elaborate spreadsheet than this. This is a summary, but essentially it's telling us, current staffing levels around 51. The projection is like 101. So we're doubling essentially the staff over the foreseeable future. And, how do we accommodate all that staff? So it's telling us that the addition needs to essentially double the amount of space that you currently have. So this is just the floor plan, the ground floor plan. And, your existing building outline is, approximately here. So we're essentially wrapping on the south and west sides a new addition to City Hall and expanding large rooms like this room here, council chambers, almost doubling the space, and a nice, again, lobby intake area. So you have lots of service counters, you have representation from all departments at the back of those service counters, you have public meeting rooms, you have public washrooms out front, and multi-purpose rooms, committee rooms, for instance, off of council chambers. And those are some of the support spaces, Zamboni rooms and compressor rooms that service the new Civic Square design. Moving upstairs, second floor. So all the various departments for City Hall, very efficient. Everyone's sharing meeting rooms through booking processes. So everyone has direct access to meeting spaces. Every floor has their own coffee lunchroom space, just for easy access and keeping it convenient. Moving up to the third floor, part of the mandate was to have the potential for expansion. So there's a lot of right now undesignated space, and even in the structural design and cost estimation, keeping the structure robust enough that we could expand a third floor over top of the roof of the second floor, for instance. So it's always in the back of our mind to plan for the future, so we're not hemming ourselves in too much onto the site. And then the basement's very much utilitarian, but just an expansion of the existing basement, keeping additional storage space. And getting into preliminary costing. So part of the task was to come up with costing for Civic Square and also for the expansion. So we're looking at an expected, we call it a Class D estimate. So it's very much a square foot cost based on the conceptual design, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $23,749,000. And that includes some escalation costs as well built in to account for construction not occurring for the next couple of years at least. And then if you want to speak to the Civic Square.
Sure. We've included a breakdown for Civic Square too. Ours looks very affordable compared to Jason's. So, but yeah, these are high level, although I will say because we're into the detail on the streetscape plan for a lot of the features and things like that, we'd be carrying a lot of that over. So we have very up-to-date, quite accurate pricing. So while it is sort of high level conceptual, we have a lot of really current data in terms of informing this. So I think that's all on that. Before we wrap up, we did want to ask too, if it's desirable to council, we can have this presentation be made publicly available and work with staff to have it posted on the website. There's a more detailed report that Jason's group has prepared that gets into a lot of detail in terms of space needs and things like that. So any of that material that the city would like be posted publicly, we're happy to do that. And really just wanted to thank all of the staff. We've had so much discussion. Definitely haven't been doing this in a vacuum. We've had lots of meetings with lots of people around a table and trying to get everyone's sort of input, and have worked really great with everyone here. So it's been, we're excited to see if one day this will happen, and happy to take any questions or comments this afternoon.
Well, thank you. Any questions of Ms. Sinclair or Mr. Morgan? Councillor Leatherborough.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentations. Ms. Sinclair, you mentioned that the last time you were here was October 2022. And just going off of what you said. So I'm just curious if you could, because I wasn't here during the last term, if you could just elaborate what the public consultation looked like to get here, or even just the engagement over the last few years. And then I have a couple more questions.
So with the initial project, there was a very large public engagement component to that. We had a number of in-person sessions at the museum. we had a couple of different options. We got input that way. We had large amounts of surveys. We met with various committees, the BIA. So it was quite extensive. I'm trying to think how long it went over. I think it was probably about a year to a year and a half in total. One of our senior landscape architects, Eliza, we worked on that project together. She's currently at home with a brand new little baby, so she's not here today. But so really when the update came, it was really just take everything that we heard through that, including all of the good feedback we received from the public, and make sure we carry those key components over. But because the city had the ability to purchase the one building that was sort of blocking the space, they thought it was worthwhile to just look at a refresh and see, okay, how could we expand it further while keeping all those same principles, and just do a bit of an updated plan so that council kind of has something that they can look to in the future. It's of course not at a detailed design level, but really to just provide what the vision is for the space in the future.
Again, through the Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for that. It's nice to know the, all of the time and effort that's gone into where we are today. I had a couple residents reach out just in regards to concerns about removing the bottom basin of the Heritage Fountain. Understanding that you just said it's not for sure designed today, but just if you had any insight of how that came to be. And then the second concern was just lack of green space. So if you just had any information about that too. Thanks.
Sure. And through you, Mr. Mayor. So the fountain, we've had lots of meetings with the museum and with heritage groups. It's not a definite that we'd be removing. Actually, in these images, we still have the original fountain shown. It's that we're just really adding additional features around the fountain. So rather than it just being, you know, a nice look at a fountain, there's more activity happening so that it is a space that gets used. There's varying opinions of whether or not you should replace it with something more contemporary or keep the existing sort of structure. That level of detail really will get determined in the future, but we do want to make sure there's at least some water feature kept there in the same historic location that it's always been, sort of off-centered from the museum. And then we thought it was really interesting that there's that geographic center of the city there, but it's kind of not really obvious. So drawing more attention to that is another feature. That's on your first question. And sorry, the green space. Sorry. Thank you. So, and actually, interestingly enough, when we went through this the first time, and I said we had two concepts, one of them had much more green space, passive space, trees. The other one was much more of what you really think of when you think of a civic square, which is a lot more space to have the ability to gather. And a lot more of the feedback at that time and the direction it went was there was a feeling that they really needed to have a space where you could have large events happening. There are certainly trees throughout. There's easily ways you could add some more green back in, but at the end of the day, when we started talking about the stage and the type of events that the city wanted to have happen here, we knew we needed to have space that you could bring in, you know, removable chairs and things like that. And that really, it's not meant to be sort of your traditional neighborhood park where it's a playground, and this is really more your civic space. And but do want to make sure we have some soft areas too to break all that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Thank you. Through your worship to Ms. St. Clair first. I have a couple of questions. Councillor Leatherbarrow did touch on the one about Patullo Fountain. I had some personal concerns about touching that area. I'm not gonna lie, I love a lot of the concept, not a big fan of the water jets things personally myself. But I did have some people question about the fountain, so I appreciate you addressing that. With the market center, actually the portion that's facing us. In your presentation, you did touch on the fact that those barriers could be removed. Looking at the theater that's currently in there, will there be consultations with them to what their needs are? Just knowing that what they consider stage left, this door that faces us in council chambers is where a lot of the large pieces of set designs and such go in and out. So, you know, concerns of stairs, accessibility and such, are those things that are going to be considered, and they'll be involved in conversations prior to any kind of design finalizations?
Thank you. Great question. And through you, Mr. Mayor. So those discussions have already been occurring and have throughout. When I mentioned earlier about making sure that you can still drive through, part of that was the theater group in the museum saying we need to be able to unload large things. So, so absolutely. And when we get into detailed design, those discussions will continue. But they, I think there was also a feeling from them that, you know, having that space be a little bit more accessible would be beneficial, but we do realize that's an important component, and we get into more detail, those discussions I'm sure will continue. Thank you.
And just a follow-up, this one's more related to the work of potentially for City Hall's expansion. I know in the designs, we see human resources and economic development moving back into the structure of City Hall, and just thinking of the work that we just wrapped up at Market Center building and all of the dollars that were put into that. Is there a reason why we're moving them back into here? Is there thoughts or plans for what could potentially be going into that other part of the building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as far as relocating staff, it was sort of the decision for an addition to make it as, I guess, all-inclusive and have all staff together for efficiencies, for, I guess, the daily communication needs and just, yeah, coordination between departments to have everyone in the same building. That being said, there wasn't that sort of future decision-making of what would happen to the market building necessarily. But it was just the decision for the concept to bring everyone together as the primary function is just to have that, yeah, sort of day-to-day correspondence between everybody.
I think I would just add quickly to that, and we've realize this will probably be, you know, not happening tomorrow, but do realize some expense was spent. But part of our reason of wanting to open up that space around that building is the hope that, you know, in the longer term future that you can maybe get in like restaurant space or things like that, that you can have the cafe spilling out and facing the square and have uses that really continue to bring the activity. But I know there was a desire, and I don't, staff want to speak more to it, but just to really not have a longer term, not have everyone sort of in different locations. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll certainly add that as somebody that has been involved with this from 2021, 2022, looking at the different progress through, I'm really excited. I mean, it shows what the possibilities are, what that space could look like. Of course, this council won't be making any final decisions on that yet. But for future councils now moving forward, I think a lot of that work is now done. A lot of those ideas have at least started and will develop. Future, I would certainly support the public having access and being able to provide public to what they'd like to see. It's long been talked about an ice rink. We have a rink right now. I don't know, you can't call it a rink. But the usage of it is proving that it's interested. The people are wanting to use downtown a lot more. So welcome that for sure. So I want to say thank you both. If there is nobody else. Thank you. So there is a motion suggestion here. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council receive the presentation regarding Civic Square and City Hall expansion concepts as information.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Leatherborough, any final discussions or comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. So again, excited to see where that goes in the future. So thank you to you and your team. Next up, Ms. Collins, Manager Marketing Communications for City of Woodstock. And of course, now we're going to be talking about the North Woodstock Recreation Facility Survey results. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. On behalf of Mr. Connors and myself, I just wanted to report back with the results of the public consultation that we just undertook for the North Woodstock Recreational Facility. So start just quickly by stepping back a little bit about the history that brought us to this point. So in April 2015, council received the first recreation needs assessment study, facility needs assessment study, which is intended to identify and guide the recreation of future recreational facilities and their needs. In that study, a new recreation complex was recommended to be located at the Cowan Fields location. And this was validated by subsequent studies in 2021 and 2024. Through those three past processes, engagement was undertaken with user groups, as well as members of council and staff, to understand and look at the types of amenities that would be included in that facility. Those studies also looked at the user data, as well as best practices for what facilities are needed based on population thresholds from other communities. And as a result, the purpose of this phase of engagement was to provide the public with an update on the status of the project, as well as, or including the recommended core amenities and potential optional amenities that might be included in the facility, as well as to gather input from the public about what's important to them when it comes to recreational facilities, their opinions and levels of comfort with respect to the cost and the timing of implementation for such a facility. And we also wanted to be cautious about asking questions that will expand the scope of the project or set unrealistic expectations about what might be included in this type of facility, recognizing the significant cost of a project of this scale. So we followed best practices from the International Association of Public Participation to design the survey. It was open between February 10th and March 7th, which allowed us to reach audiences during two key events where people were engaging with our recreational facilities. Family Day, where we welcome thousands of families into our rec facilities, as well as the Recreation and Leisure Fair, which was held at the Oxford Auditorium this March. The survey was promoted through various channels identified here on the slide, including what's on Woodstock, posters in the city facilities. It was covered in the news, local news articles. We had postcards at the Rec and Leisure Fair with QR codes where people could access the survey directly. It was also shared on the city's social media channels, as well as through our local community social media groups. So just to note a couple of considerations as we go through the results. We looked at a number of factors to assess duplicate responses to ensure the integrity of the data and make sure that people were not abusing the process. We did identify some obvious as well as some suspected duplications in the results. However, based on the number of instances, I would say that this is not significant enough to materially change the outcome of the public consultation results. Upon our analysis, we did identify a number of postal codes, which was one of the identifiers that we asked people to provide, so we had a sense of where people were responding from. There were some invalid postal codes, but again, this was not a significant enough number to cause concern. And when we mapped them, which you'll see later in the slides, of where the responses came from, 95% of the valid postal codes, which was in the number of close to 1,500 postal codes, 95% of those were within City Woodstock limits. And the final comment that I would want to make before we get going into the results was that obviously through the results, we were able to identify specific themes that we anticipated seeing based on alignment with the priorities and the interests of groups that we knew were interested in this project. So we started with a simple question: do you currently use indoor recreational facilities in Woodstock? Found that 90% of the respondents indicated that yes, they did. How often people use the current facilities. So again, if we look at from left to right, for each of these facilities, the bars reflect the responses at least once a week is the dark green, the first bar. A few times a month is the light green or second bar. A few times per year is the yellow or third bar, and rarely or never was the black or fourth bar, so that you can see the responses in terms of how frequently people accessed our facilities. We wanted to know what people liked about our current facilities. Again, this is so staff can help make decisions about considerations when they get into detailed design. And so in the report that was submitted to council, the complete responses to all of the open-ended responses is included in that. However, as a quick summary, people indicated that they like that many facilities are close to home and easy to access. They appreciate the number of facilities that we do have and that they are accessible for many people with disabilities. People appreciated the variety and availability of the programs that we offered. There's a number of comments about the cleanliness and maintenance of the facilities and that the friendliness and helpfulness of staff. We had a number of comments based on the fact that many of our programs were reasonably priced and appreciated these access to free public skating that was made available through local community sponsors. And although some comments specifically called out specific amenities and features, the quality of the ball diamonds, even though those are outdoor facilities, ice surface at Civic, although they did have comments on the building, the ice is apparently fantastic there, and a number of references to both indoor and outdoor soccer and splash pads was made. So we asked people what they don't like about our current facilities to try to assess what some of the challenges are. And so some of the top themes were availability of ice time and ability to book swimming lessons. Often this was in case where they had multiple children that they were trying to coordinate schedules. Some comments around boys hockey taking priority over girls hockey and other ice sports. Some of our facilities people felt were old and perhaps not up with current standards. Some of them identified amenities that were not available, including outdoor water, a warm therapy pool, additional pickleball courts is always a hot item. There were some comments that people felt some of the facilities were poorly laid out, specifically with relation to hallways, change rooms, family change rooms, things like that. Some parking issues were flagged specifically at Southside Aquatic Center. People had identified access that if they're in certain areas of the city that it might be difficult to get to, from one end of the city to the other end, especially with limited or no access to transit on Sundays. Some of the other concerns were capacity issues and lack of variety outside of the traditional sports. And again, condition of some of the older facilities, specifically Civic and some of the change rooms. And while the mentions were less frequent than the ones that I just went through, some of the other noteworthy comments were complaints about that our indoor walking track is by fee-based. Some communities have free ones, different circumstances that led us to that point, that some of the seating is either inconvenient or limited, and there was a desire from members who are participate in curling and some interest in having safe and available programs and services for youth. So we wanted to understand what features and amenities are important to provide a positive experience in our facilities. And you'll note that the numbers on the slide do add up to more than the total number of responses. And that is because people had the option to choose multiple or had indicated all of the above were important. So some of the questions that we asked was about adequate parking. 50% of respondents indicated that that was an important consideration to have a positive experience. 38% indicated that large change rooms was important. 48% responded that seating areas were important. And then 28% had provided an other option. And some of those responses included the affordable pricing or free programs, access or accessibility of our facilities for people with disabilities, parking, having multi-sport spaces, so things that could be flexible for use, the importance of community gathering spaces like meeting rooms and lounges for people to congregate, as well as classes and activities that were not just sport-based. People indicated that having well-maintained and clean and safe spaces was important, a desire for additional facilities that they felt perhaps weren't currently meeting the needs around ice pads or access to swimming, walking track, healthier options in food and beverage opportunities. User comfort and convenience was mentioned as well, and having, again, that flexible space so that there's an ability to accommodate changing needs as trends and interests change. And again, just the need for these types of facilities as a community hub for people to congregate and have safe spaces to connect with others, opportunities for volunteering and youth leadership programs, and desire to partner with local businesses and nonprofit organizations to create those spaces. We asked people if there were activities that they wanted to participate in that weren't currently available in Woodstock. Only 10% of respondents indicated that yes, that was the case. And some of the things that they were looking for that they couldn't participate in currently, according to what they indicated, was some of those sports with lower participation rates, or ones that are often seen in, tend to be more private clubs or services like cycling, squash, racquetball, curling, trampoline parks, water or rock climbing. People did indicate outdoor pools and water parks, but when I looked at the numbers of those, there was 60 out of the 662 responses who had provided yes, that they did have sport that they couldn't do was indicated. Again, more private club programming like Pilates, Zumba, and programs specifically related to serving people with disabilities. People indicated non-sport related programming like cooking, arts and culture, or arts and crafts, pardon me, or programs designed more for social connections, programs and spaces tailored for youth. And then some comments around outdoor facilities like beach volleyball, and noting specific design considerations like low impact development, environmental sustainable design of the space, flexible spaces, again, to keep options open as trends change. Sorry, I should have advanced the slide. They're all there. So we asked people their interest in the timing of implementation and how soon they would like to see work begin on this. The responses, because it wouldn't all fit on the screen and be legible, was immediately, there's not enough space in current facilities. Preliminary planning is fine, but we should set aside money before starting to build to minimize the financial impact. And the third option was there are more important priorities than a new rec facility. And so those responses were 74%, 20%, and 5% respectively. I rounded, so the math doesn't add up to 100, but it did. We asked people if they would prefer to build sooner with borrowed money, and 73% said that was their preference, as opposed to waiting to build once we had some reserves built up and some savings set aside. We then asked if they would prefer to build everything at once or prioritize the amenities and add on over time. Again, that was 75% in favor of proceeding all at once. We asked if they would rather build a top-end tournament facility or something that was a little bit more functional, designed to serve the needs of the community specifically. And that was where we saw a greater split between, with almost equal indicating on both of those options. We asked and gave an opportunity for people to provide further comments if there was anything else that they wanted to share with council and staff about the new rec facility. And again, people indicated a desire and need for multi-purpose recreational facilities. Again, just reference the lack of or the need to increase capacity for our growing city, highlighting specifically available swim times, certain pool features, and ice needs. People did indicate some concerns around rising costs if we push the development off too far into the future, but also others expressed concerns about the cost of such a facility and the impact on taxes. And people did offer suggestions around sponsorship and fundraising. There was some feedback around balancing priorities and the need to potentially address some of these other concerns like homelessness or that the money should have been spent on recreational needs rather than the streetscape, were just some of the feedback that they'd indicated. People had indicated that they didn't want it to just be about sports, that the importance of social, cultural, and artistic programs and amenities and availability of those in our community was important as well. Again, highlighting that community hub aspect and how important these types of facilities are for promoting healthy lifestyle and social interaction among community members. And many of them recommended looking to other communities for best practices and what's worked well in other communities. And of course, looking to Mr. Connors on that to validate, but that is of course certainly part of the process that we've been undertaking. So we of course wanted to know from the respondents if they were Woodstock residents or not. 86% of respondents indicated that yes, they were. Those numbers shifted a little bit when we actually mapped out those postal codes. And again, a lot of that was due to potentially overlapping postal codes right in those border areas. So when we looked at mapping those out on the next slides, we'll see again, 95% of the responses that we plotted were within city limits. So again, just to give a perspective on where the responses were coming from, we looked at mapping those out based on the postal code that they where the respondents indicated from. So the darker colors, there's a greater density. Again, not surprisingly, in some of those surrounding neighborhoods where there are fewer postal codes. So within Woodstock, there are obviously a lot more postal codes for the geographic area, and so there's the number of responses was distributed over more postal codes. So those colors are a little bit lighter. Not surprisingly as well, we got a number of respondents from across Oxford County. And so that just is a zoomed out map that shows some of the surrounding townships. I just manipulated it because it did not fit on the slide effectively. So you can see some from Tillsonburg, some from Norwich, and some from Thamesford as well, who had pockets of responses. And then again, as I mentioned, we looked at the distribution of the responses with the population density of the city, just to, part of the data validation that we were looking at. And you can see those two zoomed out areas specifically where there are higher population densities also do reflect higher response rates, which correlates between, what we would expect in terms of the numbers of people responding versus the number of people living in those areas. So just thought that was an interesting comparison. And with that, I would welcome questions from council.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Collins or Mr. Connors for that matter, I think would be appropriate at this time? Seeing none. Okay, thank you. We're looking for a motion. Oh, no motion. My apologies. No resolution is required as this refers to the department report 14G.1, so we'll get to that shortly. No mayor's report, no councilor reports, but we do have some department reports this afternoon. 14A Administrative Services, 14A1 Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Transfer Payment Agreement. Looking for a motion? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the transfer payment agreement with His Majesty the King and Right of Ontario as represented by the Solicitor General for the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Program, and that the necessary bylaw be read.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Leatherborough, discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Next up, 14A2, 2024 Development Charge Reserve Fund. Counselor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council receive the 2024 Development Charges Reserve Fund report as information.
Thank you. The seconder? Counselor Shattenberg. Discussion or questions? Counselor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Ashton. Just confirmation from staff, if I'm reading this correctly, that we are pulling more out of reserves, or at least in 2024, pulled more out of reserves than what we put in. So our balance at the beginning of the year was higher than what it is at the end of the year.
Your worship, through the councilor's question, that is correct.
And just to follow up, that difference is 16 point, almost 6 million and almost 16 million, so 6.6 million difference.
Your
Ballpark.
worship, through to the councilor's question, we started the year at 16.6 million and we ended at about 16.1 million.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Nothing from engineering or cultural services, but of course, Parks and Recreation, 14D1, City of Woodstock Parks Plan. Counselor Shattenberg.
Yeah, the motion that Woodstock City Council receive the City of Woodstock Parks Plan report as information.
Thank you. Seconded by? Or do I have a seconder? Counselor Wismer Van Meer. Discussion or questions? Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
More of just a comment. I think I find it really interesting when you grab the community profile that is shared on here, and it just, despite kind of what we're seeing, like the trends kind of saying that an aging population is what you see the growth in the most, but in our community, it's actually the children 0 to 9 that have had the highest growth population of 20% versus seniors 70 plus at 19%. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see that shift, and obviously why I think what we just heard from Ms. Collins, that there's a lot of speaking to about supporting young people and making sure we have that youth activity in there, why these park lands and having this accessible for people is so important, because this aging population is shifting obviously for our community. And we're seeing a very young population, 0 to 9, and those folks are going to need somewhere to go and do things. So it just kind of was interesting to see that snapshot presented.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It was actually quite interesting. And to see the fact of 481 acres of parkland, 56 parks already here in the city, it's hard to believe. And wow. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. None opposed. So from economic development, we do have 14E.1, a mutual release. Looking for a motion, Counselor Shattenberg.
Motion that Woodstock City Council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a mutual release with the Guerra Group, Inc. and further the necessary bylaw to rescind bylaw 9676-24 be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on that? Counselor Martin? Discussion or questions? Counselor Shattenberg?
Yeah, maybe through our Development Commissioner Len Magyar, just to describe specifically where in Woodstock this project was, and probably that's about the only question we really need to know based on supply and demand of industrial property.
Your worship, through to Councillor Shattenberg, this is a parcel of land. It's about a little over 8 acres, directly fronting on the 401 on the LEA property. So what, just to get a little bit of background to the audience, basically we sold this land to this group through the due diligence process. They just basically came out that they did not want to proceed with the actual purchase. So this is an opportunity to allow both of us out of the agreement mutually and return their deposit to them and put the piece of land back on the market.
And again, just to clarify, and I did see the map, this literally has 401 frontage, does it not?
Your worship, through the question, that's correct. It's directly fronting on the 401. So it's already actually garnered a little bit of interest. So it'll be a great piece for what I would call a profile site on the 401.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Nothing from clerks, but we do have Chief Administrative Officer 14G.1 North Woodstock Recreation Facility Survey Results. Looking for a motion? Counselor Leatherborough?
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council receive the results of the public feedback regarding the North Woodstock Recreation Facility as information.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Counselor Wismer Van Meer, discussion or questions? Counselor Wismer Van Meer?
Through your worship to Mr. Connors, I had this question asked to me by a couple of folks and I really didn't know the answer. And so I did mean to ask you about this before, so hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot, but folks were kind of curious what the next steps were. We have this survey and information from the public of what they'd like to see and maybe not see. What are the next steps from this after this survey is completed?
Thank you. Your worship, through to the councillor's question. The next steps are as follows. Contractor is currently working with engineering regarding the roads for the property. After that, an application of subdivision will come forward, followed by a full park assessment will be done on the entirety of the land, and then more detailed drawings would be commissioned for a community center.
Thank you. Counselor Schattenberg?
Likely just a statement, but it might evolve into a question for Mr. Connors. I do remember back in 1996 when I was at the Sutton Review as a sports editor that it cost 13.5 million to be able to build a community complex, including the golf gym, which is now the golf gym, and the gymnastics center. But from that amount of money, 3 million was raised by the community, and what was called Take Pride, Take Part was the campaign at that point in time. And the reason I state that is as much as we want to build facilities that we quite frankly need facilities. I do firmly believe the Civic Center arena needs to be replaced with something more compliant and more attainable or more accessible for today's day and age, using every definition of the word accessible. When it's all said and done, maybe this is where Mr. Connors can answer the question. Somebody somewhere has to sort of spearhead an ad hoc committee of some sort to do some fundraising to not only gauge the interest of the community, which does exist, but gauge that interest in another direction towards how do we financially build this.
Your worship, through to the councillor's question, that is certainly something that will require quite a bit of thought as far as what directions or how many directions that we try to get some funding for this. It is significant amount of money, certainly. And if trends are anything to be followed, I don't believe it's going to get any cheaper in the future. In fact, we might be chasing it as costs of building materials keep rising.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Atchoney. Sorry, I didn't have my hand up when you glanced over here, and I should have been more proactive. Just for the public's information, that we're receiving the information from the survey, and that this is not a motion to put a hole in the ground and start digging. That we're not a long way off, but we're a way off from that, and that there's a lot of work to be done yet. I also, along with Councillor Schadenberg, had questions about financing this, and that we're in a unique time financially. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, and it is going to take a robust plan to put this together when the time comes to put shovels in the ground, because debt alone would be beyond burdensome for a lot of residents in our community. So it's going to take a well thought out plan.
Yes, that was exactly the notes I had made to make comments as well, that this is information for those watching here today, and it's something to consider moving forward, as the expenses is quite high. Anyone else? Call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Brings us to Human Resources, 14H.1, Council Policies, HS 001, Health and Safety Policy, and Prevention of Workplace Violence and Harassment. Councillor Schadenberg.
Yeah, Woodstock City Council Policy HS 001 dash Health and Safety Policy, and HS 002 Prevention of Workplace Violence and Harassment be adopted as amended.
Thank you. Do we have seconder? Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Discussion? Councillor Schadenberg, or questions?
Yeah, without trying to assess some of the differences or changes myself, I'd like to call forward Magda Lesky, our Director of Human Resources, to explain certainly how things have changed in time and what changes in this policy.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Through the Mayor to the Council's question. So this particular policy change is there was a change in the legislation in terms of the definition of a workplace. So of course, with the last few years and the emergence of virtual workplaces, that has now made its way into the definition under the legislation. So we just updated our policy to include and reflect the new definition.
Thank you. Continue.
Without painting with a big brush, is it safe to say that the veracity of some things like bullying has certainly changed over time as well? The workplace seems to be a different place.
Through Mayor to the Council's questions, yes. I think also with the fact that we are educating staff and public about these things, they do come up a little bit more, I would say, in my experience in the last probably 5 years or so, specifically with the pandemic, changing folks' temperaments. That has also raised some concerns or questions. We do have a very strict policy in terms of how we educate our staff in terms of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And we do have policies and resources in place for when this does happen.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none? Thank you for coming forward. If no one has anything else, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Brings us to Fire Services. 14I.1 Woodstock Fire Department Annual Report for 2024. Looking for a motion? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
I move that Woodstock City Council receive the Woodstock Fire Department Annual Report as information.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Leatherborough. Discussion or questions? I should note the chief is here in house. Councillor Schadenberg.
Yes, from the mayor through Chief Slager, because he is in chambers right now. Maybe want to ask a question if there's any specific trends that are not nice to see for a municipality, but any trends in particular? And I know one of the things, for example, that your force has to be congratulated on, there was back-to-back days this past week already where there was 2 structure fires. So I'm assuming those were different shifts that to tackle them because they were on consecutive days. So that makes sometimes your work very, very difficult.
Your worship, through to the councillor, yes, so we have had a busy week, unfortunately. The initial fire, well, the first fire occurred just before shift change, so it actually involved our outgoing and incoming shift. And then the subsequent fire that we had was another shift altogether. So 3 of the 4 were quite busy this past week, addressing the residential fires that we've had here in the city. We're very grateful for the teams that we've got. They were able to deal with the situations very quickly and minimize any extension or any loss or injuries for individuals. So as we keep saying, things can be replaced, people can't, and we're safe there. So thank you for the comments. With respect to trends with this, the annual report, a lot of the information that we've given in this, I kind of formatted the report that we tend to include with our operating budget presentation. The idea with this was to separate that. And as I did mention during our operating budget, I did pull out some of that, didn't provide as much information because I knew that this was coming forward. The goal is that we'll be putting this type of a report together and presenting it to council before the operating budget. So you're able to have that sort of information when you're hearing our operating come forward, and shorten some of the time down. For those who know I can speak lots, you'll be grateful that the operating budget will be a little shorter with respect there. Trends, we have seen, when you look at our calls and our volumes, when we transfer through some of the charts that we've had, there are certain areas that things are growing, where our medical calls continue to increase as we go through. We have had some adaptations to the types of calls that we go out to with tiered response. But unfortunately, we also have had just a simple increase in the standard calls that we go out to. We're seeing a growth greatly in there. Our false alarms, we did have kind of a bit of a, I hate saying a banner year, it did increase a significant amount there. We do have the false fire alarm bylaw that addresses any repeat offenders or challenges that we may have that. These didn't fall within that vein there to be able to address their single call. We do have the challenges there. The more occupancies, the more residences and buildings that we have here that have fire alarms, we're going to have more failures or false alarms come through. So as our population grows, you'll find that potentially if we look at what the percentage is based on population, the number of calls, it is going to grow in sequence with the population. So no notable trends, I could say. There will be some more detailed information that'll come with the fire master plan that'll be presented in May.
Thank you. Councillor Schanberg.
Yeah, not sure if it's actually noted in the report whatsoever, but this is maybe more of a good news question for me to ask you. I was talking to Ms. Woods at the employment event at the Oxford Auditorium last week, and she was talking about the number of female firefighters have on the crew, and it's good to see that number is growing. What's it up to now?
So the diversification within the fire service, Woodstock specifically, has been increasing. We have 5 female firefighters, 4 that are in our suppression division, 1 in our prevention division at this present time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, I know you touched on it. The false alarms, that number, in my opinion, looked like it was increasing a fair bit, almost 100 year over year, of course. Is there any education we can do with the public? Because of course that takes staff time, that takes, sometimes literally people jumping in a truck and running off. Is there anything we can do to help minimize those false alarms, in your opinion?
Your worship, through to the question. So a lot of the advertising we try to do with respect to smoke alarms is making sure that the age of them, they're less than 10 years old. Older alarms are prone to failure. We do also see, we've had a lot of construction, new residential units in here. And unfortunately, with the new units, they're brand new smoke alarms or smoke detectors or CO that are in them. but the dust from construction gets in them and it can kind of set them off. A wind current goes through, interferes, has problems. So it's cleaning them. Don't take them apart, have your vacuum, use a vacuum, clean them from the outside, reduce the dust that's in there, replace them before they're 10 years old to minimize the opportunity of them failing. And that will start to drop down. The active units in date, cleaned, we have fewer false alarms with them. The type of smoke alarm can also impact it. Probably most people with me at home, when I'm cooking, it's the smoke alarm goes off to let everybody know in the house that dinner's done. Or some people will say that if you're just plain and simple boiling water, it'll set them off. There are multiple types of smoke alarms. If you're prone to those type, reach out to our fire department. Our prevention team will be able to help you determine what is the best smoke alarm for your area.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Seeing none? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Looking for a motion? We already did. I'm sorry. Been a long day. Any other further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. So nothing from Public Works or IT this afternoon. Special Committee and Advisory Task Force reports. 15A, of course, we're talking 2025 Community Grant Program, first intake of the year. Looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Martin?
Thank you very much. That in accordance with the Community Grants Policy GA 003, Woodstock City Council allocates the following grants for the 2025 spring intake. 13th Woodstock Scouts, $3,000. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Oxford County, $5,000. Oxford County Branch for Ontario Ancestors, $1,000. Oxford County Trails Council, $1,000. Oxford Pride Committee, $5,000. The Parent Student Council for Friendly City Taekwondo, $1,500. Rotary Club of Woodstock Festival of Music, $5,000. Special Olympics Ontario for Woodstock, $5,000. Theatre Woodstock on behalf of Stages Youth Theatre, $5,600. Woodstock and District Developmental Services, $5,000. Woodstock Dragon Boat Club, $4,000. Woodstock Minor Ball Association, $5,000. Woodstock Triathlon Club Kids Do Committee, $1,000.
Is there a seconder on that? Councillor Leatherborough. Discussion or questions? Seeing none? I'd just like to simply say thank you to the Grants Committee. I do have the big folder, of course, and flipping through that on my desk, it is absolutely incredible. Councillor Martin has it to show. There's a lot of detail there and a lot of requests. And it's hats off to those that go through and look at those requests. The needs are growing. It's certainly no question here in the community all over the place. Councillor Schanberg.
I know the money we receive from Gateway goes to several sources, but I was just wanted to know what percentage of the monies earmarked directly to grants has been already used in the spring intake versus what's left for the fall intake for the 2025 years. There's still significant dollars remaining in this account?
Can you speak to that as Cynthia? Would you know that? Would you mind coming forward? Yeah, I think I did read it. I didn't pull it up here.
So council member, it was in the report. I don't have it in front of me. So it shows the amount that was carried over.
Okay. If I could, your worship, in the report, it does say that if the recommended amount of grants is approved by council, $109,430 would remain in the fund for the fall intake.
Okay, thank you. I answered that. Councillor Schanberg?
Therefore, by basic math, we're only spending about 1/3 of the amount for the grants for the springtime.
Yes, through you, Chair to Council, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. No notice of motion, no new business that I'm familiar with. Brings us to draft bylaws. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Atchison. I move by myself and seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer that the following bylaws be given a first and second reading. 9746-25, a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement with His Majesty the King and Right of Ontario, represented by the Solicitor General for the Province of Ontario for the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Program. And bylaw 9747-25, a bylaw to rescind bylaw 9676-24 to provide for the sale of certain lands owned by the Corporation of the City of Woodstock to Guerra Group, Inc.
Thank you. Discussion, questions on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Schadenberg, that the following bylaws be given a third and final reading. 9746-25 and 9747-25.
Thank you. Last chance. Any questions, concerns with those? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. And that brings us to our questions and addresses this afternoon. And today we're going to start with Councillor Leatherborough.
Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Councillor Leatherborough. I will. I hope you do too. Enjoy this nice weather and hopefully we are done with that icky stuff that was here earlier this week.
Councillor Schadenberg.
Yeah, the Woodstock Museum and National Historical Sites has a lunch and learning spring series going on. The next event's on April the 15th, and what's important about that is it's really a history of the city of Woodstock as far as the political side of things. It's hard to believe we've only had 3 women as mayors in the city of Woodstock, but the first one was Bernadette Smith. So April the 15th is the lunch and learn at the cost is only $20, so a light lunch is included at the museum. So you can register at woodstockmuseum.ca for that event. It's sort of a profile on Bernadette Smith, the first, actually she was the first elected female mayor in Canada for a city. So she wasn't assigned, she wasn't from a small township, to be elected, so that was a significant accomplishment at that time. I'll remind everyone that K2K Productions continues. Finding Nemo Jr. continues until April the 6th. So it started last weekend at the Movement Church on Lansdowne and it continues until April the 6th as far as shows and productions of that one go. And one more thing to mention, February the 18th at 6 p.m. That doesn't pass, does it? I got the wrong event here. That was the provincial election. Does anybody know when the federal election debate is at the Unifor Hall? Because I think that's something we should really remind people of, but February the 18th would have been the provincial election debate.
Hasn't been set yet.
The date hasn't been set yet by Unifor? Okay, thanks.
I
think
I haven't heard myself, so I say.
Part of
Did they?
website?
We'll give you an opportunity to look that up, Councillor Schadenberg, and I will add to that the museum lunch and learn, Councillor Leatherborough and myself will be in attendance and speaking at that event as well. So we certainly hope to see lots in the public for that event. And Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Councillor Schadenberg covered one of mine for the K2K Productions. This is actually their 20th anniversary this year of being in Woodstock and Oxford County. So one of my colleagues, her daughter went to see it on a school trip. And she said for a grade 3 student, she was very well spoken when she came home to say how incredibly amazing she was and that she thought every single person should be going to watch it. So In the words of the grade 3 student of Harlow, everybody needs to go watch Finding Nemo Jr. And tonight, actually, Theater Woodstock, a rock sales buy opens up. And for this production, they are offering a BOGO, so buy one, get one free ticket. So a great opportunity to go and check out some local theater while it's happening here in Woodstock. And yes, so that does open up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you find it, Councillor Schadenberg?
Yeah, Unifor Local 636 on Wednesday, April the 16th. Members of the public can attend 6 p.m., April the 11th, and it's also going to be broadcast on Rogers TV as well. So that's when the event is. And they want you to email your questions to Unifor636Mel. So it's her name, Mel, M-E-L, @gmail.com.
So sorry, did you say April 11th or April 16th?
April 16th.
16th.
And they want the questions emailed by April the 11th.
Okay. I think you said April 11th. Okay, well, thank you for that. First of all, I'd like to thank the public, of course, for their input on the facility needs study. Have, you know, almost 1,700 people complete that and 90% say they use the facilities. I'm not surprised with a lot of the responses. So I just want to say thank you for that input. We do rely on that a lot. Park staff, of course, this is the time of year, being a little appropriate with 56 parks. I just want to say thank you to them for, they're about to get things going and get them all ready for all of us to enjoy. And I feel that I've got to mention something about what's going on with our southern neighbors here with these tariffs. I've got a lot of businesses and companies, or sorry, employees and residents kind of reaching out and concerns, and we certainly share that. I want to, in speaking with companies, there's a lot of, we're okay. We are stable. We are in a place that other places like doing business here. They want to continue doing business here. Things are going to be, things may look slightly different in the next little while, but I want to really stress that businesses are here to stay, and we'll look at maybe shifting things. Stay positive. We're going to keep going. Let's support each other the best we can, more than anything. And with that, look for an adjournment. Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Leatherborough. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.